I like this thing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of Unlimited Limited, the show where we talk about Star Wars Unlimited's limited formats like Draft and Sealed. So I figure because the pre-release season is kind of coming to a close, the draft season, is just starting to start up. I don't really have any crazy meta reports for you guys yet. And also, Star Wars Unlimited is 1 year old as of a week or so ago. I figure it'd be a cool time to just look back on the year and talk about what I like to talk about, which is draft. In particular, I'd like to talk about the top 10 draft bombs in Star Wars Unlimited so far. Now, these are going to include draft bombs from Spark of the Rebellion, Shadows of the Galaxy, Twilight of the Republic, and Jump to Lightspeed. Of course, I haven't drafted Jump to Lightspeed yet, so those ones are a little bit more speculative. Going to my first draft tomorrow. I'm very excited. And also, there's no data, really. There's no online draft data like there is for Magic with 17 lands. So in a game like Magic, it's really easy to just look at the data that they have for draft and just look at the cards with the highest win rates. So we can't really do that here, so there's a little bit more subjectivity to it than there is in Magic. So that's all to say that this is very much my opinion, okay? So if you have gotten a bunch of wins in draft with, say, K2SO, don't let me stop you from taking him super highly. If you think he's number one on this list, more power to you, okay? Grab that droid. But in my opinion, these are the top 10. Before we get started, I want to do a couple of honorable mentions. So I want to talk about Sabine's Masterpiece, one of the cards in the new set. So this didn't quite make top 10 for me. So this is a 3-cost 3/3 ship that has a bunch of really great on-attack abilities. You'll almost always be hitting at least one, and sometimes you'll be hitting two of those. It's also only heroism, so you can and should play it in any heroism draft deck. If you're able to play this on turn 2 and then start swinging with it, you're probably going to run away with the game pretty quickly. Didn't quite make the top 10 list just because it is pretty easy for your opponent to remove. Sometimes they are just going to play a 3/2 ship on turn 1, and then what are you going to do? Or maybe they play a ship on turn 2, and then if you had a turn 1 play, they could have initiative for all sorts of reasons and could take out Sabine's Masterpiece there. So great card, absolutely great card. And also, not a lot of 3-drops that you're super happy to see late game, but this is one of them. So this is, if you draw it late game, is still totally fine because of all that extra value it gets you. Next I had Emperor Palpatine, Master of the Dark Side from Spark of the Rebellion, which I did actually have on the top 10 list originally, but I just took him off because, again, you play him, you kill probably 2, maybe 3 of your opponent's units, and then you just have a 6/6 overwhelm. If you're casting this card, you're probably winning the game. If he cost 7, he would have easily made the top 10 list. 8, I think, is a tiny bit too much to be quite top 10, but that being said, again, if you do play this card, you're almost certainly going to win that game. This one's a little bit of an unorthodox pick, but Vambrace Flamethrower, I think, is also a draft bomb that almost made the top 10. So it's a 3-cost equipment that gives +1/+1. It's from Shadows of the Galaxy. And then on attack, you may divide 3 damage as you choose amongst enemy ground units. So the reason this is not quite in the top 10 is because it has the downside that every kind of equipment has, in that if you play this and then your opponent just removes the thing you played it on, you've just gotten 2 for 1. You've lost a lot of tempo, you've lost a lot of value, you've lost cards. It's really, really not good if that happens. That being said, if they don't have removal, which as we all know, if you're a listener of this show or know anything about Limited at all, removal is king. But if you play this and your opponent can't immediately remove what you play it on, that game is going to be very hard for them to come back in the ground arena of this game. Maybe they can go back in the space arena. This can only hit ground units, but yeah. I also have Poe Dameron from Shadows of the Galaxy. Quick to Improvise is the subtitle. This card is a 5-cost 6/6, and it has a bunch of very versatile on attacks. As we've talked about, having options is super handy, and these are all quite good options. So Poe Dameron, super strong card. Enfys Nest, Champion of Justice, is a 7-cost 5/7 from Twilight of the Republic. It's got Saboteur, and whenever you play it or attack, you can return an enemy unit with non-leader unit, of course, with less power than this unit to its owner's hand, and that's 5. So most of your opponent's deck, like almost all of it, barring a couple of cards, are going to be 5 or less cost if they've built it well. And being able to just, when you play it right away, so even if they can remove it right away, you still get some value. This card is just absolutely insane. And then if you're able to start attacking with it, your opponent's just not going to be able to come back. Then Victor Leader from Jump to Lightspeed, the 2/4 space unit for 3 that pumps all your space units, +1/+1. Once again, yeah, if you're able to go in space, which in Jump to Lightspeed you are most of the time going to be having a pretty formidable space presence, then this is very strong. This is very close to top 10, and if you are able to go wide in space, like make a bunch of TIE fighters, then this is just pretty much the best card possible that you could draft. Like this is the best bomb in your deck if you're able to get there on TIE fighters and stuff. I also feel like I should talk about Crate Dragon. So Crate Dragon is the very example of if I play this card, I kind of just win the game, right? Like, yeah, it costs 9 for sure. Elephant in the room. Not every game is going to last that long. And I had this on the top 10 list originally, and the reason why I took it off, it's very close, but the reason why I took it off is because in my experience, when I've played against Crate Dragon in mostly constructed, but I have played against it in limited a couple of times, most of the time what ends up happening is that they play this, and then I just say, okay, and I just attack their base 2 or 3 times, and I win. Of course, that isn't always going to happen. If I don't have onboard lethal, or if they get it down a turn sooner than I can do onboard lethal, then it's going to be a real problem, and I'm just going to not be able to win that game. So I do think Crate Dragon is a strong draft card. 9 is a lot, but again, if you play this and your opponent was hoping they could come back or like top deck something nice, that dream is gone. They either have to have it or they don't have it at all. All right, so let's get into my opinions for the top 10. Again, my opinions. Okay, cool. Number 10, we have Jango Fett, Renowned Bounty Hunter from Shadows of the Galaxy. So this card is so insane. It costs 4, so you can play it on turn 3, and it's got 6 life. So your opponent's probably not going to be able to immediately deal with it unless they have some kind of hard removal. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what hard removal would be able to deal with this on curve in this set, and I don't know what it would be. But nevertheless, so it obviously this card is better if you have bounty, but even if you you can give your opponent stuff bounty, but even if you don't get there on bounty stuff, like when you play this on turn 3 and it untaps, it readies on turn 4, your opponent is going to have something with 3 or less life that you can trade into, or not trade into, eat, because there's no way it'll have 6 power. So like, you are getting a card out of Jango Fett basically every time if you play it on curve. And that is so insane. It's so efficient that it does that. And the fact that if you are able to get there on the bounty stuff, the fact it becomes a 6/6 with Overwhelm is absolutely ridiculous. So almost always this will be getting itself back as a card and dealing with one of your opponent's units. And also, if not killing another unit, doing 3 damage to another unit whenever they attack into it, because they will need to deal with this. And then if you manage to put like equipment on this or something like the Van Brace that we saw earlier, I know that's 2 rares, but it could happen. There is a decent amount of equipment in this set, especially in this set. Very, very, very scary card to see played against you. I think it makes the top 10 in my opinion. If you get even like 2 cards off of it, you're so good. All right, this next one might be controversial. Next up, we have Energy Conversion Lab. So it's well known, whether you listen to me or anyone else, that ambush is pretty much the strongest keyword in limited Star Wars Unlimited, and cards are balanced with that in mind. So for example, if you wanted to, let's say you're designing a card for this game, right? And you want to make, let's say, a 4-drop. The absolute most you could maybe push its stats to would be something like 5/5, right? But if you wanted to give it ambush, you would have to bring those stats down, maybe make it a 3/3, or maybe a 3/4 or a 4/3 or something like that, right? There probably exists a card that I'm thinking of when I describe this, but nevertheless, whenever you're balancing a card, you have to account for the keywords you give it. And this just sort of says, okay, but what if I don't want to do that kind of balance? What if I want to have all of the stats? What if I want to have that 4-cost 5/5 and also give it ambush? Now, it only does it once, of course. and you're sacrificing 5 life, and 5 life is not nothing. But giving anything ambush, pretty much anything, most things in your limited deck will be 6 or less, is just so ridiculous. So this'll often just say, I'm going to remove one of my opponent's things because the thing you're ambushing in, again, probably going to be a lot stronger than your typical ambush card for that cost, and those are already very strong cards. So this is a absolutely terrifying thing to see across the table from you in limited and in constructed. As we all know, unless there's some crazy brews that have come out in the last 24 hours since I last looked, Energy Conversion Lab is the best base in the game. You know, I'm a Tarkin Town defender myself. I love Tarkin Town, okay, but Energy Conversion Lab is better in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion. Although Tarkin Town is being a little scary and meta right now, but I digress. All right, for number 8, we have Han Solo Has His Moments from the new set. So this is a 5-cost 4/5 ambush. So I was just talking about well-statted ambush cards a moment ago, and this is a well-statted ambush card. And it has piloting for 2, and it gives something +2/+3 and attacks immediately. So again, this action sheets, it is efficient and it gives you options. All of those things I love. Again, if you've listened to me talk before, you know that in my opinion and the opinions of many seasoned drafters and just card game players in general, is that giving yourself options is stronger than it looks, right? If I staple 2 medium cards onto each other, it doesn't just make like an okay card, it makes a very good card. And this is stapling 2 good cards on each other. Like a 5-cost 4/5 ambush, I would just play that. And then a 2-cost upgrade that gives +2/+3 and immediately makes the unit attack, I would also just play that. Now, the Millennium Falcon thing, I think, can technically come up in the set. The Millennium Falcon in the set is a special rarity, meaning it's in the starter decks, but I think those can also come in packs in the hyperspace slot. Don't quote me on that, but it's something like that. I know you can get Falcon in this. Someone did it to me at pre-release. But yeah, so I would play either of those cards, and I would be happy to do so. The fact that this is both of them, you have to really think about how insane that is. So it's and then the other thing is this costing 2 is just so ridiculous because it's jump to light speeds. There's a lot of space units. So on turn 1 you play a space unit, and then turn 2 you now just have the biggest space unit. You've removed whatever their turn 1 space unit is, assuming you have the initiative, and you still have a resource to play with left over. Very, very strong card. It's a legendary, so you won't see it that often, but whenever you do, I strongly suggest taking it if you can justify it. Next up, we have Cad Bane Hostage Taker. So a 7-cost 7/7, pretty good stats for the cost, right? But really, you're looking at the when played ability. So this is a constructed card, so you guys all probably know what it does. It's like good enough for constructed. But whenever when you play it, you're going to be taking capture. You're going to be capturing probably at least 2, but sometimes 3 units on your opponent's side, and that will that in and of itself is it's very obvious why removing 3 of your opponent's units is good, right? But it's even better than it looks, because you might be thinking, okay, yeah, sure, but what if they have removal for it? So what if you play Cad Bane, you take 3 enemy units, they remove it. Yeah, that sucks for sure. Being able to attack with your 7/7 even once is really, really strong, and they're depriving you of that for sure. But I mean, assuming you've done your actions correctly, like you've now just exhausted 3 of their units that were going to attack, right? And that means that you get basically an entire extra turn to attack into their base with your units. And sure, you'll probably be forfeiting initiative to do that, but like that's a lot of extra damage, and it probably is going to change the pace of the game to be, maybe it was pretty even on the back and forth, and now you have a turn advantage on getting into base. So now you're the beatdown, and they really have to play defensively. So even in the worst case scenario, and that's worst case scenario where they immediately remove Cad Bane. But like even like medium case scenario, you attack once with Cad Bane, and yeah, maybe they get their unit back, like I guess, but drawing 2 cards, like that's a total, like, you makes you feel like a businessman. It makes you feel like a bounty hunter. That unit will cost you, right? And getting 2 cards, as you know, you're just gonna you're already ahead on swinging to base now because you've just had an extra turn to do it. But now you're also ahead on like cards. You're going crazy if you're able to do anything with Cad Bane here. Even worst case scenario. Next we have Darth Vader commanding the First Legion which is a 7 cost 5/7 ambush. You guys all know what this card does. It's probably, I think it's the most expensive base card in the game, like not extra rarity or anything like that. Don't quote me on that though. As of recording this, though, I think it is. So that being said, you guys probably know what this card does. Yeah. So 7 cost 5/7 ambush means this is going to come down and remove basically anything. And what I like about this card is it basically just is on it. It's a 3-for-1, right? You play it, that's 1. You deal with one of your opponent's units, that's 1. You get another unit, minimum 1 unit off your library. And again, your deck is only 30 cards. So looking at the top 10 whenever you're playing your 7 cost unit, that's going to be most of the rest of your deck. So if you have something in your deck that's going to be good in this situation that you haven't drawn yet, you are probably going to see it whenever you play this card in draft. So yeah, you get the attack, which probably is going to remove a unit because 5 is a lot. You get the big unit still left over because it's very unlikely that they're going to be dealing 7 on that defense. And then you're getting the second unit off of it. So they're going to need to run another unit into Darth Vader in order to deal with him. So yeah, this is pretty much just on its stick. Like even if they are able to remove it immediately, pretty much a 3-for-1 guarantee. So Darth Vader, hard to get better value than that, especially if you're able to, of course, one of the lines that you would see in Constructed often was getting Veers with Vader. And that's, of course, something that you can do in draft too. Those are both, I think Veers is a uncommon too, right? So it's like pretty likely that you'll be able to do that. And that, of course, just makes your whole board bigger. And yeah, good luck. Good luck to your opponent whenever that happens. All right, this next one is probably the most controversial one. Are you guys ready for this? I'm ready. Get your hate comments ready, okay? Everyone scroll down to the comment section and start. I was on board until... Okay, you guys got that all typed out? Okay. Thermal oscillator. All right, okay, I know. I just talked about how good Energy Conversion Lab is and how it's the best base in the game. And that's all true. That's true. Energy Conversion Lab is the best base in the game, I think. I think it's better than Target Town. Even though Target Town is probably seeing more meta play right now. In a vacuum, I think it's better than Target Town. But Thermal Oscillator, what you need to consider is that Energy Conversion Lab makes one card in your deck quite a bit better by giving it Ambush, right? That's true. Makes one card in your deck better. Thermal Oscillator does not make any cards in your deck better. But what Thermal Oscillator does is it makes your deck better. Your whole deck. It makes it more consistent. It makes it better on average, the average quality of the card, and it makes it more likely that you're going to be, drawing what you need. Basically, it just makes your whole deck on average 20% better. Because in Limited, you're only building 30 card decks. In Constructed, it's only making your deck, 10% better, right? Because you're playing a 50 card deck. But in Limited, you're only playing a 30 card deck. It makes your deck, I think, about 20% better if you're building your deck correctly. And sure, 3 life is not nothing, but I mean, Energy Conversion Lab is 5 life, right? This is you have more life than Energy Conversion Lab. So I am very high on Thermal Oscillator. I think that if I was playing, and this is you guys get ready to hit that unsubscribe button whenever I say this, okay? But if I was playing in a very high stakes jump to light speed tournament where the only thing that mattered was winning, like I didn't care about like drafting fun combos or cool cards or anything like that, and I opened up Thermal Oscillator in my first pack, I would be taking it without, I would look at all the other cards so I could map signals and stuff like that, but I wouldn't even consider any of the other cards. I would take Thermal Oscillator. I think this card is just so insanely good, not because it improves any one element of your deck, but improves your whole deck. You can think of it like every card in your deck being 20% better. And that is just so valuable. The 5 less cards, some people think of that as like a downside because it's like, oh, what if you like deck? And it's like, yeah, I guess, what if you deck? But that's doesn't happen too often. And if you take Thermal Oscillator early, then you can consider building your deck in a way that you try to maybe close the games out a little bit quicker. Something else you do have to be a little bit careful with is whenever you take a very strong card that's not in your colors and you think, okay, maybe I'll splash this, that's fine. You can splash it. You can play 2x, or you can pay 2 extra for it. You can't really splash for Thermal Oscillator because it's your base, right? So you can, but then let's say you're building a Command Cunning deck and you take Thermal Oscillator and you're playing, let's say, Darth Vader, the Command one. Well, now every cunning card is a splash, and you don't really want to do that. So do have to be careful. Like, if you take this, you do need to be in aggression. There's no way you can splash it just because it's a bomb, in my opinion. But yeah. So anyway, my most controversial one for sure. I think the rest people are going to generally agree with, but this one is a little spicy. Next up, we have Han Solo Reluctant Hero from Spark of the Rebellion. This card is a 7-cost 6/6 with ambush, and while attacking, this unit deals combat damage before the defender. So this card is ridiculously bonkers good because it basically kind of has, it's a little bit worse, but it kind of has the text that the Palpatine did at the beginning of the video, where you play it and it deals 6 to something. Right? Because one of the reasons why ambush is, now of course that's a little better because you get to split it up how you want, but one of the reasons why ambush is so good in this game is because it kind of, you can treat it like removal, which is very good, right? You play an ambush unit, it removes a unit, and that's awesome. But what happens with ambush is that unit also deals damage to your ambush unit, and that's a downside. Maybe it kills your ambush unit, maybe it weakens it so much that another unit is able to take it out. But this is like, this just says, oh, I'm going to have all of the good sides of ambush without any of the potential downside. Like, I'm swinging in for 6, and your unit's going to take 6, and I'm not going to take anything. That's so insanely good because the kind of like guaranteed 2-for-1 that ambush gives you is like even more locked in with Han Solo. And the fact that it's going to come down, almost certainly kill one of your opponent's units, and take no damage back means that your opponent needs to have a second unit that is big enough that could swing back and kill Han Solo. Which, of course, when you play Han Solo, that's going to be the unit you're going to kill, right? And now they're going to have a bunch of smaller units that they're going to need to run multiple into, or you're going to get to go to your next turn and take out another unit for free with Han Solo. Like, pretty much genuinely the worst case scenario is if your opponent has 2 big units, you take one out and then they run the other one into Han Solo, and that's still fine. You still kind of 2-for-1 there, right? And that's like the worst case scenario. It's very rare that your opponent's going to have 2 units that are of the size that can take out Han. So definitely an insane unit. That doesn't really change anything of how insane this unit is. Next up, we have Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight. So similar to Han in that, or similar to why ambush is so good, right? You play it and it removes something, and this sort of has the same upside that Han does, where you play it and you remove something without ever taking anything back. And oftentimes, if you've sequenced your turn okay, you're not always going to be able to do this. Sometimes you will just need to get this down as fast as you can, but oftentimes if you can go for the extra value, it's wise to do so. Just being able to play this -6 something, take out like a big threat of theirs, and then if they're not able to close out the game kind of right there or kill Luke, then they're probably going to lose, right? Restore 3 is so huge. If they're not able to close out the game that turn, they're not going to be able to close out the game, right? The fact that you're able to take out one of their units and restore 3 basically every turn until they eventually run another unit into Luke, or you've taken out multiple of their units, is so ridiculous. So yeah, this is just, again, guaranteed 2-for-1, and oftentimes going to be more than that as well. Very, very, very strong. Next up, we have Supreme Leader Snoke Shadow Ruler from Shadows of the Galaxy. It's an 8-cost 6/6. It says enemy non-leader or each enemy non-leader unit gets -2/-2. This card is in a lot of ways comparable to Crate Dragon, where it's a very expensive card, 8 versus 9. It has good stats. Crate Dragon has way better stats than this, just to be clear, but good stats, and it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to come back from just by the unit existing sort of on the field. The reason why Snoke made the list and Crate Dragon didn't is because that situation I described with Crate Dragon, where your opponent plays it and you just like kind of close out the game right there, you just keep attacking base like with stuff on the field, is Snoke doesn't really let you do that. Like, so instead of your opponent playing Crate Dragon, imagine they play Snoke. Even if you were kind of close to closing out the game before, now you're not. Like, it's likely that just Snoke existing on the field has killed a couple of your units, your smaller units, and the units that are big, that won't be killed by this, are now small enough such that it massively changes the math on the base race, right? Let's say they have, 3 3/3s on the field, and you had 9 life left on your base. If they play Crate Dragon, that's boom, you're done. But if they play Snoke, or if yeah, then you get in for 3 total. That's it. And then yeah, no, your opponent probably has other stuff that they still have on the field. They can take out those units, which brings me to the next point, right? If let's say you play a 4 cost 4/4, and then your opponent has Snoke on the field, now your 4-drop is dying to their 2-drops. So not only is it probably killing multiple units, and now also all of your units are now trading down, and also all of your base math that you had maybe done before is now completely off, and you have to completely rethink your game plan. Snoke is just so ridiculous. And even if they do have removal when you play Snoke, like that does suck for sure. I mean, it's not quite as immune to removal in the way that like Crate Dragon kind of is, but like it still probably killed like 2 of your units maybe, right? Like you play Snoke, 2 of their opponent's units dies, they are immediately like, okay, I don't know what was Vanquish in this set, but you know what I mean, like some kind of piece of removal. And like, yeah, I guess that sucks, right? But it doesn't suck that much. You still killed 2 of their units and took a removal spell from their hand. So again, Snoke is just such a beating. If you play this card, it's basically just an I win button. All right, now number 1. I'm gonna pause for a few seconds. And I'm just gonna just like go to the comments and just like type what you think number 1 is. Okay, I don't know if you guys are like drafted a bunch of the set that number 1 is from. But if you did, you know why this card is number 1. All right, I'll give it like 5 more seconds. Go type it. Okay. No cheating. Go type. I think the number 1 card on this list is going to be blank. Go type that. Okay. And then hit enter so I can see the predictions. Okay. All right. Okay. Great. So the number 1 card in draft in the first year of Star Wars Unlimited, in my opinion, is Overwhelming Barrage. So if you were like, first of all, not everyone got to draft Spark Rebellion. I got very lucky. I drafted it a few times because when it was the main set, or when it was the most recent set that was out, of course, product was super hard to find, which is unfortunate. And now that there's product of Spark the Rebellion that's a bit easier to find, people are drafting the newer sets, which is understandable. But, I mean, if you can get at your local game store an opportunity to draft Spark the Rebellion, I recommend it. It was a fun draft set. But Overwhelming Barrage is, I think, the only card in Star Wars Unlimited history where I was happy to splash it. Like, a card like, I don't know, Han Solo has his moments. I would like consider splashing if I really needed to. Maybe Luke if I thought I could like get the game to go that late. But Overwhelming Barrage, paying 7 for that, I was like, yeah, sign me up. Because what this did, and again, at uncommon by the way, what this did is for 5 resources, or 7 if you were splashing it was fine. It gave one of your units +2/+2 for the whole phase, not just for this effect, for the whole phase. And then it got to deal damage, divided as you choose, however you want, among all units. There was no arena restriction. There was no non-leader restriction. And then after that all happened, your unit still had the bonus. So you could either cash in for an extra 2 into base, or you could now take a trade that maybe you couldn't have done before doing this. Trading up a unit. So oftentimes when you played this, you got to destroy 2 or 3 of your opponent's units, and then also, get in with your now bigger unit, either to base or a 4th unit, or a 3rd or 4th unit. This was just such a beating. I had lots of games end with one person just casting this. They're just like, oh, I have Overwhelming Rush. It's like, oh, GG. Now, some people have weak mental, you cast this and they're like, oh, I don't even want to play it out. But you should still play it out. It's not that devastating, but it's pretty crazy whenever someone plays this card against you. And it's ultimately it's removal, which is like the most important thing to draft. And not only is it removal, it's the best removal that you can possibly get in draft, really. It often just truly felt like a one-sided board wipe that also got in for an extra 2. Genuinely. Absolute beater. And it didn't even need to be. Usually you wanted to play it on a readied unit so you could use that extra 2 power, but it didn't even need to be readied. If it was exhausted for whatever reason, doesn't matter. absolute beating of a card, and in my opinion, the number one card in Star Wars Unlimited Draft in the first year. All right, thank you so much for coming and listening to my top 10 list. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because truly these are just one man's thoughts. There's no objectivity here at all. And maybe you've had a different experience and you agree with some of the list but not all of it, or maybe you agree with none of the list and you have your own. And I would genuinely, I will read it and reply to it. I would love to see what you think are the top 10 draft cards from the first year of Star Wars Unlimited. I look forward to doing this again, hopefully next year. I can look back on the top 10 draft cards from that year, or do like a cumulative one. I'm curious if Overwhelming Barrage will still be the strongest draft card 1 year from now. I think it might be. This one is very, very, very draft spicy. All right, and because I still have prize packs left over for my pre-release, we're going to do a crack-a-pack, so be right back. All right, so you guys know how this works. We're going to crack a pack of Jump to Lightspeed, and we're going to talk about thought processes for a pack one, pick one scenario. So if you open this pack as your first pick in draft, and we'll see what we can pull. One of these times it's going to be a showcase. I think this is... If you watched the last episode, I think 2 out of the 3 of these we did was Admiral Akbar, so he loves us. And I think it was a blue base too, huh? All right, Barrel Roll. Barrel Roll is a fun one. Not really something that I'm considering this early in a draft. Good card, but not good enough, I don't think, for that. Same with Hopeful Volunteer, just like a fine thing to pick up later. Landspeeder is very good. So again, Ambush, I'm into that. I'm going to throw this back here. Supporting Ada 2, not amazing. It's something that you're kind of fine picking up later. It's not bad though, but not early. Direct Hit, I love this card, genuinely amazing. There's so many vehicles in this set. Tandem Assault, this one is fun, and I don't think it's never playable, but it's one that you kind of only want to have a couple of effects like this that don't sort of directly impact the board, but it definitely can be. It can be handy to action sheet like this and get it for an extra 2. Special Forces TIE Fighter. This is, again, a solid card. It is double color, which kind of is points against it in draft because you don't know whether you're going to be villainy yet or aggression yet. And it's less of a risk to take only cards with one of those. So definitely I'm trying to avoid that. But it is a strong card. Repair is just not really draft playable. But I mean, you can if you need to, but it's not amazing. Scouting Headhunter is an interesting 2-drop, but not what I'm interested in right now. BB-8, sort of the same idea. If you get there on resistance stuff, this card can be pretty strong, but I think that's something that you think about later after maybe you've seen a couple of the stronger resistance cards. Like I think the Poe is pretty strong in this set. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, it's not the first resistance card you want to pick up. It is good though, for sure. Fireball, this card is very strong. I think it's seeing constructed play right now, like a lot of it. If you have Kazuda as your leader, this is crazy, and if you don't have Kazuda as leader, it's still good. The reason I'm not considering it right now is the double cost super early. You know what? I actually will still put it back here because it is still quite strong. This card is just, again, it's something that you want to pick up later. 6 cost 4/4 Sentinel. And yeah, it's not super exciting. And our rare is Eject. So this card, I talked about it a little bit in my pre-release retrospective video, which I recommend you watch if you are interested in sealed or pre-release for this format. But Eject is a cool card. Now, we're not going to be first picking it here, but I do want to just highlight the fact that it can target your opponents. And people didn't realize that at my pre-release. Someone actually told me that in my YouTube comments, and I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think of that. And I did that at pre-release, I think 2 or 3 times, and every time my opponent was like, wait, you can do that? So keep that in mind for this card. It actually is pretty good, but it's not quite first pickable, I don't think. And our foil is Red Leader. This card is also very solid, but again, it's a bit of a build around. You want to be able to get value with this card, so you need to be able to get there on the pile of stuff, which is pretty easy to do in this set. So I did call it a build around, but that's not quite fair because it's I guess technically a build around, but like it's very easy to get that build going. So Definitely a strong card, but I don't think it's quite as strong as the guys we have back here. So let's have a look at our top 3 picks right now. So we have the Land Speeder, Fireball, and Direct Hit. In this scenario, I would probably, even though Fireball is probably individually the strongest card here, the double cost I think just puts it a little bit over the edge for me. And between these two, I think we may have had this exact face-up before. I'm not sure. I'm going to take Direct Hit. I think just the unconditional removal, very, very, very strong. Destroyer, I guess it's conditional, sort of. It destroys a vehicle, but that is very strong in the set because there are a ton of vehicles, and it's important to maintain control on vehicles. So if your opponents have a leader unit, that you want to be able to make sure that you can destroy vehicles before they equip leaders to it. Even if that delays your opponent's leader flip by like 1 turn, that's crazy value. Crazy tempo that you need to be keeping an eye on. So definitely I would take this card. Of course, this was a pretty strong pack though, I think. Fireball, Land Speeder, and even BB-8 I think is like a fine first pick, and a couple of other ones here too. This if you're not too scared about the aspect cost. Yeah. You know what? Let's do a second pack. Only 2 today though. All right. If this pack has Admiral Akbar as the leader, I'm making him the mascot of the channel. And if it's a showcase, I'll get a tattoo of Admiral Akbar. Okay, it's Lando. I actually don't think I have this leader yet. I think this is the only leader in the set that flips on 7. All right. Sith Trooper, pretty fine filler unit. Like it's a 3-cost 3/3. You'll run that sometimes, especially if you're in villainy. Not really a first pick. Kimogula Heavy Fighter. This one is pretty interesting. I actually do like this card a lot. I wonder if it's first pickable or not. Hopefully I have a little bit more insight later. My intuition is no, because oftentimes what this says is, deal indirect damage is basically, when you play it early, always just going to be going to base anyway. So the like extra little bit of this doesn't really matter that much, where like, oh, it exhausts their units. Yeah, well, it's never going to be hitting their units. And if it does, they'll put it on units that are exhausted already first. This is kind of very much the illusion of choice. It's very much just going to be 4-cost 3/4, deal 3 to base, which is fine for sure. But I don't think it's quite first pickable, but in a weaker pack, I would maybe think about it. Corellian Freighter, it's fine, but yeah, it's absolutely never first pickable. Republic Y-Wing, kind of the same deal. I love having cheap vehicles that I can just put leaders on, but same thing with Special Forces TIE Fighters last time. It's just double cost. Landing Shuttle, funny card. I'm testing it right now in a list with Thrawn, but stay tuned for that. But it's, I don't know. Prepare for Takeoff is actually a pretty good card. I played it at pre-release, although I think I never actually used the card, which is a shame. But it was in my deck, and I was like excited to draw it and use it, but it just never, I either never drew it or it was just the wrong time. But yeah, solid card. Twin Laser Turret. This is a difficult to evaluate card. It's one of the very few upgrades in this set that are not pilots. I don't think it's first pickable just because it's pretty easy to get 2-for-1 with, and it doesn't have the same sort of benefit of a pilot where you can play it as a unit as well. It's not a bad card, and I'm definitely interested in playing it out. I don't think it's first pickable, but I think it's like still a good card. Like it is a strong upgrade for sure. Interceptor Ace is, again, the double cost is just not quite there. This is also, it's not the illusion of choice. You can play it as unit if you want, but you pretty much always want to play this one as a pilot. Giving something +3 health and grit is going to look really, really strong, especially if your opponent has indirect damage that they're doing. Yes, Poe Dameron. So this is one of the resistance cards that you can consider first picking. I was talking about that for BB-8 earlier, so definitely I will consider that one. Immediately blown out of the water by our next uncommon, Captain Tarkin, which each friendly vehicle gets +1/+0 and Overwhelm, is very, very strong on a 3-cost 2/5. This is hard to kill early game, right? 5 is a lot. And the fact it's only aggression. There's no heroism or villainy here, so it's easier, even if Poe Dameron is the better card, and I'm not actually sure it is. They're probably pretty comparable. Captain Tarkin being easier to play in your deck is just too valuable in first pick scenarios, so I think that he's there for sure. Contracted Hunter is awesome. It's a 3-cost 4/4 ambush. This card is basically open fire. It's a strong card. If you can play it, if you get Kazuna as your leader, it gets way stronger, of course. But it's every other scenario is just going to be open fire, pretty much. Oh, and we got a legendary. Nice. That's the first one on this show, I think. Invincible Naval Adversary. The six cost 6/6. That basically you want to play this in Trench, right? Because then you have a Separatist card. Your leader is Separatist. Yeah, I mean it's a fine card, but it's not particularly exciting. When you deploy a leader, you may return a non-leader unit that costs 3 or less to its owner's hand. So the line you're often going to want to do with this when you do have it, which isn't going to be often because it's a legendary, is you're going to want to play this and then you're going to want to deploy your leader as an upgrade onto it because a lot of leaders will flip on 6. And then you have this massive threat that is a leader, so it's hard to remove. And it also, you're going to be able to bounce one of your opponents. So you're going to get tempo in addition to all of that. So definitely a very strong card. And you know what? I will put it back here for now. And Director Krennic. Card is awesome. I love the design of this card. In Thrawn, of course, is where it's sort of meant to be. Good card, but it's not first pickable here. All right, so I'm going to take a Contracted Hunter. This card is just open fire, which is very strong, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's as strong as some of our other picks. It's one of the very few times where I'm considering not taking removal here first, because I do just consider this card removal. Between Poe Dameron and Captain Tarkin, I do think Captain Tarkin is better for all the reasons I talked about earlier, mainly its cost, or its aspect cost. So that being said, again, I wouldn't fault anyone for taking Poe Dameron here. He's very strong. And then it's just between Tarkin and Invincible. Now, I think this is one of those times where I'm like, if I'm trying to be awesome, I'm taking Invincible. If I'm trying to win as many games as possible, I'm probably still on Tarkin. I think just having all of your vehicles being a little bit stronger. And this isn't just on attack. I mean, the Overwhelm is, sure, because of how Overwhelm works, but they just always have +1/+0. Even whenever they're defending, right? If your opponent attacks one of your units, it's buffed if you have Captain Tarkin. So very, very, very strong card. Although, again, in a real scenario, it would be hard for me to pass Invincible. That card's just too funny. But again, also the fact that it's cunning and villainy would dissuade me a little bit. But yeah, so I in a real scenario, I probably actually would end up taking Invincible. But if I'm just trying to be as optimal as possible, I'm probably on Captain Tarkin. But yeah, cool packs, and thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk next time. So as I mentioned earlier, my first draft of Jump to Lightspeed is tomorrow. So I'm going to be probably doing a video on how that goes. So hopefully it goes well. Hopefully the Force is with me. And as always, may the Force be with you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?